Final Destination, Death of the Senses, Chapter 11. "Well, there she is," Amy said, taking a breath. "So who wants to go ruin her mill?"
"She already knows you," Jack pointed out.
"Which is exactly why somebody else should probably go first."
Okay, sighed Jack, seeing Katie and Joshua exchanging glances as if daring each other to speak first. "I'll do it."
He walked over to Dominique's table and stood by the drinks trolley. Dominique didn't even notice him standing there, so he cleared his throat.
"Excuse me, Mrs. Swan."
"Call me Dominique," she said without looking around, then giggled, getting a sycophantic round of chuckles from her companions. Her voice was slightly slurred, and the flush of her cheeks made Jack wonder how many drinks she'd had. She finally registered his presence and looked up. "Hello." She did a double take and ran her gaze up and down him, adding in a more sultry tone, "Oh, hello," the tip of her tongue sliding suggestively around the corner of her glossy red lips. Her friends all stared up at him as well.
Hi,"
said Jack, aware that Amy had crossed her arms and was frowning at Dominique from behind Joshua.
Dominique, I just wondered if I could talk to you for a minute."
"As long as it's not about your grandmother's fabulous recipe for blueberry cobbler," Dominique purred. Her friends chuckled at what was obviously a private joke.
No."
Good. Here, let me get a pen. Does anybody have a pen?"
A pen?"
Jack asked. Both of Dominique's male companions fumbled in their jacket pockets, producing fountain pens, and thrusting them at her as if in formation.
"Oh, no, I don't want your autograph."
"You don't?" pounded Dominique. "Jack," Amy growled impatiently, waving a hand for him to hurry up. Dominique looked around at the sound of a new voice, giving Joshua the once-over before her eyes settled on Amy. "Aren't you—" "Hey!" Her expression changed from a pout to a scowl. "You're that lunatic from this morning, that cop."
Yeah, she's with me," Jack said.
"What lunatic?" one of the women with Dominique asked. "You didn't tell us you had a stalker."
"You know you hit the big time when you get your very own stalker," added one of the men.
"I'm not a stalker," Amy said, offended. "I'm a cop."
Jack realized things were getting out of control. "Look, it's very important that we talk to you."
"Oh, God," snorted Dominique. "Don't tell me you believe that I'm about to die as well."
Yes, Jack said simply. "I do."
Katie stepped forward. "I'd listen to him, Miss Swan. Love your recipes, by the way. I would have died today myself if it hadn't been for Jack. He risked his own life to save mine." One of the two men at the table muttered something to his friend, apparently recognizing her.
"Me too," said Joshua. "These two came to see me, told me what they told you. I didn't believe a word of it. Kicked them out. Next thing I knew, my $100,000 sound system turns into a death trap, and I missed getting my head crushed by this much." He held up his thumb and forefinger, barely an inch apart. "I'd take them seriously." "And why should we take you seriously?" the other man at the table demanded. Joshua gave him a narrow-eyed smile. "Because I'm the richest dude in this room by about $20 million, that's why." "Oh, this is ridiculous," Dominique snapped. She sat up, clicking her fingers in the air. Waiter! Yes, you." "Can I help you, ma'am?" asked the white-jacketed waiter as he hurried over. "Get the maitre d', please," she demanded. The waiter nodded and headed off to find Gunther. Jack watched him go helplessly. "Listen," he finally said, turning back to Dominique. "We're absolutely serious about this. 2 people are dead already. 2 more." He indicated Katie and Joshua. "We're almost killed, and would have been if we hadn't been here to warn them. And if you don't take precautions, if you don't watch out for every possible danger, then you'll be next." "I'll be next,"
repeated Dominique. She looked at Amy. Accidents, you said? Didn't you? That's right, Amy answered. Bizarre accidents, yes? Amy nodded. So, Dominique continued with a sneer, what you're saying is that I could die at any moment because this chandelier, she tipped her head back and pointed at the ceiling, could just fall on my head at any moment. Or this oil lamp. She tapped at the bowl-shaped lamp on the table in front of her with the red painted nail. Could blow up in my face and kill me, is that right? Yeah, said Jack. He was still looking at the crystal chandelier above Dominique. Reflections glittered within it, reflections of flames that didn't exist yet. There's gonna be a fire, somehow, and if you don't find some way to avoid it, it's gonna kill you. Genuine concern appeared on Dominique's face for the first time. There was something about this man's certainty, the sense that he believed that what he was saying was inevitable, that she suddenly found very unsettling, even though she had absolutely no intention of believing it herself. The silence around the table that followed Jack's words was broken by the arrival of Gunther, who appeared with the waiter in tow. Is there a problem here, Mr. Cornell? He asked Joshua. Not from me, Joshua said, but you might want to have a fire extinguisher handy. The maitre d' looked confused. Hello, I'm the person who called for you, Dominique shrilled. These people are disrupting my meal and upsetting my friends, and me for that matter. Can you get rid of them? Gunther looked pained. Mr. Cornell is a regular patron of this establishment, he said feebly, gesturing at Joshua. And so is everyone at this table, Dominique said. And more to the point, one of the people at this table, me, is a personal friend of every single restaurant critic in this city. Now, you wouldn't want me to start writing about how your supposedly exclusive establishment lets just anybody come in off the street and start ruining people's evenings, would you? No, ma'am, said the chastened maitre d'. I'm really very sorry, Mr. Cornell, but I'm going to have to ask you and your friends to leave. Please leave Mrs. Swan alone. He leaned closer to Joshua, whispering, This isn't why I let you in, sir. I thought you just wanted to speak to her, not to disrupt her evening. Well, Gunther, that's too bad. But the thing we needed to talk to her about isn't exactly conducive to a great dining experience, Joshua replied. Somebody telling you that you might die today won't do much for your digestion. You told her she'd... Gunther looked appalled. Mr. Cornell, that's not very appropriate dinner conversation. A waiter arrived with a tray bearing 5 small bowls containing various desserts. He stopped short when he reached the group of people standing by the table, looking to Gunther for instructions. Well, demanded Dominique, are you going to get rid of them or just let them stand there while we eat our desserts? The maitre d' held out his hands, trying to shepherd Jack, Amy, Katie, and Joshua away from the table. The waiter who'd arrived with him took the cue and moved to act as a block between them and the table, ushering them away. I'm sorry, Mr. Cornell, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to insist that you and your friends leave the dining room. If you'll please let the waiter through. Jack reluctantly moved aside, the waiter looking over his shoulder in puzzlement about what was going on before starting to set out the bowls in front of the diners. You're seriously going to throw me out? Joshua asked in disbelief. You do remember who I am, right? You remember my face? Black businessman worth about $100 million, very influential in the entertainment industry. Ring any bells? I'm really very sorry, Mr. Cornell, said Gunther, looking genuinely pained as he backed away, trying to get them to follow him. But I can't let people ruin the evening for our patrons, no matter who they are. Maybe you could wait in the lounge area, enjoy a drink on the house. Joshua was unswayed. Ha! See, if I come here again, man, I don't even like French food. He started to follow Gunther back through the dining room, past the curious looks of other diners nearby. The waiter behind Jack didn't say anything, but made it very clear from his attitude that he expected the others to follow him. With the final glance back at Dominique, who was quite deliberately holding her head high and looking in another direction. He set off in Joshua's wake. "Well, that was weird," said Bethany, flicking back her hair and looking askance at the strange bunch being led away by the maitre d'. "I'd go a bit further than just weird," Dominique frowned at her friend. Now that she thought about it, the earnest one of the group, the woman in the velvet dress, seemed familiar. She'd definitely seen her face somewhere, not just in a casual meeting, but in a picture, or even on a TV screen. Was she an actress or something? And the way the maitre d' had groveled to the black guy suggested that he was telling the truth about being a rich regular at La Opera. Was there something to what they'd said after all? There couldn't be. It was insane. Though she did carefully push the oil lamp on the table a bit further away from her. "I wouldn't worry about it, Dee," Peters said. "The man was obviously wrong in the head." "He didn't even have a tie," sniffed Edward. "I mean, how are you supposed to take anyone seriously when they can't even dress for dinner?" The comment produced a little round of self-satisfied laughter around the table, but Dominique was feeling less than amused. Laura picked up her glass and finished off her liqueur, reaching for the bottle on the drinks trolley to refill it. "Just forget about it, Dawn. Have your dessert. That'll take your mind off of it. Oh, and have some more of this, as well." She shook the bottle, an ornately decorated brick of blue glass, at Dominique, who waved it away. Laura made an "oh well" face, added another shot to her own glass, and unsteadily replaced the bottle on the trolley. "Looks nice, Dee," said Peter, examining the Marquis à Chocolat et Amaretto in his bowl. Of course, the two men had gone with what she was having. Dominique hadn't decided if she was ever going to stop toying with them and just have sex with either of them, or maybe both, or neither. It was a lot of fun, with the thrill of power being an object of desire. What she desired most was a spoonful of the Marquis. She took a moment to assess the presentation, which more than met her standards, then dug in her spoon. Nice, firm consistency, moist without being stodgy, the nuts well mixed in. She wouldn't have expected anything less from La Opera and Chef Moret, but it didn't hurt to check, to keep them on their toes. She lifted the spoon to her lips and eased it into her mouth, letting her tongue slowly absorb the taste. Oh yes, now that was good. Her friends caught the approval on her face and started on their own desserts. Had Chef Moret added a little extra something to his recipe? There was a hint of nutmeg, or maybe... Something caught in her throat. She coughed slightly to dislodge it, but nothing happened. Instinctively, she tried to draw in more air, which only served to pull the blockage tighter. Her eyes widened as she found she couldn't breathe. Raising the fingers of her free hand to her throat, she tried to force what air was in her lungs out, to free the glob of food that was now choking her. But nothing emerged from her throat, apart from a gasp so tiny even she could barely hear it. Edward flicked an eyebrow as he saw her expression change. Maybe I should have had the glacé instead, Dominique." Dominique flapped her hands at her throat, twitching in her chair as she struggled for the air that could no longer reach her lungs. "Dominique!" she heard Edward repeat, worry now in his voice. The thing in her throat seemed to be growing, moving, twisting inside her to wedge itself more tightly into her windpipe. She tried to stand, banging an elbow painfully against the table as her chair refused to move, sticking to the floor. Her mouth was wide open, desperately trying to draw a breath. The chair still would not move. She hit the table again, Peter's wine glass toppling over. The music from the string quartet turned hollow, echoing. She stared in terrified disbelief at the faces watching her, the faces staring back in blank incomprehension, voices repeatedly saying her name. "Do something," she silently begged them. "I'm fucking choking, help me!" The chair finally moved, as if pulled free of mud. Dominique struggled upright, a growing rushing noise in her ears muffling the crash as she jolted the table with her hip. All the glasses were knocked over this time, the oil lamp rolling away on its side and dropping to the marble floor. Something fell off the drinks trolley and smashed. Bethany clutched her hands to her face, looking as though she were screaming, but all Dominique could hear was a pounding hiss, pulsing in time with the burning pain in her chest and the crushing weight on her lungs. Red lines of veins throbbed in her vision, which was becoming obscured by a dark haze rolling in from the edges. Something bumped against her hard. She felt a tightness around her, someone taking hold of her from behind and squeezing again, harder. She felt the thing in her throat move slightly, but no longer had the strength to react. Squeeze! Amy desperately tried the Heimlich maneuver one last time, following her first aid training to try to force the blockage out of Dominique's throat. If it didn't move this time, Dominique coughed, a sharp exhalation that blew a lump of something half chewed out of her mouth like a bullet. He hit a blue bottle on the drinks trolley, hard enough to make it wobble. "Jesus!" Amy cried, full of sudden relief that it had worked. Dominique convulsed in her arms, drawing in a huge whooping breath of air, then another. She was all right. Unnoticed by anyone in the commotion, the liquor bottle wobbled for longer than it should have, each swing bigger than the one before, not smaller. It paused for a moment, almost perfectly balanced on one edge of its square base, then tipped over onto its side. The cap popped off. Alcohol trickled out, splashing onto the marble floor below. It formed a pool, but a stream, which in total defiance of nature began to wind its way deliberately across the hard stone tiles. Dominique slumped to her knees, still sucking in deep, painful yet wonderful gulps of air. "Thanks," she struggled to force out. "Thank you." "No problem," came the reply, a female voice, and it definitely wasn't Bethany or Laura. She woozily turned her head to see the female cop crouching next to her, looking concerned but also quite pleased with herself. "How are you feeling? Are you okay?" I'm fine," she managed to say. She heard running footsteps clapping on the marble, and looked past the cop to see the maitre d', who looked terrified. As well he might. Having a celebrity chef almost choke to death on one of your dishes was not good publicity. My God, he squealed. "Mrs. Swan, are you all right?" Dominique's strength was starting to come back. She pushed herself upright, kneeling up. "I'm okay. Just a nut got caught in my throat. I'm okay now." The stream of alcohol slid toward Dominique, somehow gathering pace even on the level surface, like a serpent impatient to reach its prey. It touched the hem of her dress, pausing just long enough to begin soaking into the material, then continued on its way, sliding between her legs and curving back toward the table. Something suddenly occurred to Jack. His eyes darted over the table, taking in the overturned glasses. Where was the oil lamp? Amy held out a hand to Dominique to help her to her feet. Just a minute, came the reply, her voice still weak. I need a moment, please. The stream was moving in an almost straight line heading for the oil lamp, which had rolled under Edward's chair and was resting unnoticed against one of its legs. Jack tried to spot the oil lamp. It wasn't on the table, which meant it was either on one of the chairs. Dominique's dinner companions were all standing now, gawping ineffectually at her and Amy, or more likely on the floor. Ignoring the questioning looks from the people around him, he bent down, hunting for the telltale flicker of orange light. There! Nowhere near Dominique, fortunately, and on a marble floor there was very little chance of its setting fire to anything, even if any of the oil had spilled. The stone around it seemed dry, though, except for... The advancing trail of liquid from the liquor bottle reached the fallen lamp. A slight breeze arose from nowhere, as though somebody had walked past, disturbing the quietly burning flame coming from the oil-soaked wick. For a moment it fluttered downwards. Fire touched the stream of highly flammable alcohol. Jack saw the flash of ignition, the streak of blue fire racing across the floor, straight to Dominique. Amy caught the unexpected light in the corner of her eye and looked around to see what had caused it. She was just in time to see the line of flame charge past her, narrowly missing her feet as it rushed straight for the new alcohol-sodden patch of Dominique's dress. Dominique saw the flash of fire too, but was too shocked to react. She didn't have to. Jack lunged at her, bending down to grab her around her chest, and then straightening to yank her cleanly off the floor, just as the flame reached her. The blue blaze tried to stretch up from the small puddle that had formed against Dominique's leg, clawing for a hold on her dress. It was too late. She was clear. Jack set Dominique down on her chair, worried that he might have hurt her, when he picked her up. "Are you okay?" Dominique was gasping for breath again. I think so." "You didn't get burned?" "No, I'm okay." Her eyebrows rose as events sank in. I'm okay." Said Joshua in a "I told you so" tone. He pointed to Jack and Amy. "Didn't I tell you these guys were for real?" Dominique nodded at him, then opened her mouth wide to take in a deep breath of relief. Amy looked at the trail of flame, which was still flickering. "Somebody get a fire extinguisher now." The fire continued on past where Dominique had been kneeling, following the trail of alcohol back to its source, the overturned bottle on the drinks trolley, which was continuing to trickle out its contents. It was still over a third full. Blue flame reached the bottom of the falling liquid, paused for a moment, then sprang upwards, racing greedily for the reservoir of almost neat alcohol inside the bottle. The bottle exploded. The glass was quite thick and heavy, though most of the brick-shaped blue container. The thinnest part was where the top curved up to form the neck. As a whole, it withstood the sudden explosion surprisingly well. A couple of people nearby, Gunther, a waiter, Laura, were hit by random shards. By containing the explosion, the bottle channeled the force of the blast in one direction, through the weak, thin glass around its top. The neck of the bottle was blown free, a dense cylinder of blue glass with jagged, sheared edges at its base, whipping end over end as it shot from the trolley. Dominique still had her mouth open to recover her breath when the chunk of glass hit her right in it. It sliced apart the muscle of her tongue and carved right through the soft flesh at the back of her throat, ripping into tissue and arteries like a miniature chainsaw before stopping abruptly against the bones of her neck. Shattering into a dozen pieces, the glass burst outwards from the point of impact, committing further internal carnage, before coming to a stop deep inside her tangled and shredded tissue. Dominique's head had been jerked backwards by the impact. Now it slowly tipped forwards again as she feebly raised her hands to her mouth. She tried to speak, but all that emerged was a wet gurgling sound. Blood started to drip, then flow from her lips, pumped from great lacerations inside her neck by her still racing heart. Amy gasped in horror as she saw what had happened. Something solid slid from Dominique's mouth as the blood continued to pour out. A torn, severed chunk of her tongue. It landed in her lap, splashing the blood already pooling there over the other diners. With a final tiny sound of anguish, Dominique stared desperately at Jack as she slowly slumped forward, then toppled off the chair, her head hitting the marble floor with a crack. Not that she felt it. She was already dead before the first scream echoed through the room. The soothing sound of classical violins quickly replaced by confused panic.
"You know, Curtis, this is starting to get to be a habit," said Bereave.
"Shut up, Pete," Amy warned him. They were still in La Opera, where part of a paramedic team was zipping Dominique's corpse into a body bag, as the rest of their number treated the people who'd been cut by pieces of flying glass from the exploding bottle. Cops had shown up at the same time as the paramedics, responding to calls by frightened patrons that there had been some sort of explosion.
"I'm serious," Bereave told her curtly. "He's present at 4 deaths in as many days. That takes it way past coincidence as far as I'm concerned. If it was up to me, I'd arrest him right now."
"But it's not up to you, is it?" said Jack from the chair where he was sitting, staring morosely at the floor. He was tired. Tired physically, tired emotionally, and tired of Bereave treating him like shit. He wearily raised his head to look up at the policeman. "How many witnesses this time? 10? 12? They all say the same thing. I didn't kill him. I didn't kill Donahue or Chelsea Cox either."
"You did kill that guy in the alley, though," Bereave reminded him, eyes glinting coldly.
"In self-defense," Amy snapped. "And to save my life as well, remember? Which he wouldn't have to do if you hadn't taken so long getting your goddamn coffee." Anger flared on Bereave's face.
"Hey, don't you even think about trying to pin this on me, Amy. What the hell's wrong with you? Ever since you met this guy, you've been defending him and turning your back on everyone fucking else."
"I haven't been turning my back," Amy said. "It's just that this is something more than just police work, Pete. I can't really explain it, but it matters. It's important."
"Well, you might have to explain it. And this premonition bullshit isn't going to cut it with internal affairs, Amy. Word's been going around. You know what cops are like. People at the precinct have been talking about you."
"Oh, yeah? And what have they been saying?"
"You don't want to know, but everybody's worried about you. You're getting too tied up in whatever the fuck this guy's up to."
"I'm not up to anything," Jack said. "I've just been trying to save people's lives, same as you."
"Yeah, well, you've been doing a bang-up job, that's for sure."
Bereave jerked the thumb at the black rubber bag containing Dominique as the paramedics hoisted it onto a gurney and wheeled it away. "And what about them?" demanded Amy, indicating Katie and Joshua, who were still giving their witness statements to other cops. "They'd be dead too if it wasn't for Jack."
"So you say," Bereave said, clearly not believing her. "But how did he know who they were and where to find them, even if he actually did somehow save them? That journal you found in the warehouse doesn't name any names, Amy. It's pretty goddamn vague. But somehow this guy has it all worked out. Visions, premonitions, whatever. I don't believe in any of that kind of witchcraft shit. And you didn't used to either." He shook his head. "Wherever this guy goes, bad shit happens to people. You should stay away from him, Amy, before you get hurt yourself, and more to the point, to save your career."
"What's that supposed to mean?"
"I'm just warning you is all. Cops talk, and some of them talk to their bosses. You run into a homeless guy who's got some crazy-ass story about having visions of people dying, and the next thing anyone knows, he's hauling you around between crime scenes and living in your apartment. People are asking what the hell's going on."
Amy fixed Bereave with a cutting stare, as she understood the implication of what he'd just said. "And how would anyone know that Jack's staying at my place, Pete?"
He chewed on his lower lip, trapped.
"You son of a bitch!" Amy stepped right up to Bereave, glaring up at his reddening face with a look of cold fury. "You told people? You went and told people at the precinct that Jack was staying at my apartment? What else did you tell them, Pete? That I was sleeping with him, maybe? What's the matter? Are you jealous?"
Bereave struggled to find words. It wasn't like that, Amy. Look! All I was doing was trying to protect you, okay? Keep you out of trouble."
"I don't need your protection," Amy said, forcing herself not to shout right into his face. "And it's none of your fucking business who I invite into my home."
"You're my partner. That makes it my business."
"Well, maybe it's time that I find a new partner," Amy said, stepping back.
"What?"
Bereave looked horrified. "I can't believe you did this to me, Pete. You totally betrayed my confidence, my trust. How am I supposed to keep working with you after you do something like this to me? Jesus!"
"I didn't betray your trust, Amy," protested Bereave. I'm looking out for you, trying to help you. If you let this guy stick around with you, then sooner or later something bad's going to happen to you. And I'm not going to let that happen.
It's not your decision to make, Pete, Amy told him coldly. Now excuse me, I want to go home.
Bereaved narrowed his eyes, regarding Jack malevolently. With him?
Yes, Pete, with him. Jack, come on, let's go.
She held out a hand, and Jack took it, standing up and following her in the direction of Joshua and Katie. Amy! Bereaved barked from behind them. Amy! She ignored him, going to Katie.
Are you okay? I'm all right, I think.
She was still pale, and her voice trembled slightly as she looked in the direction that the paramedics had taken Dominique's body. It struck Amy that it was entirely possible Katie had never seen a dead body before, and had certainly never witnessed somebody being killed in front of her.
Just shaken up a bit. Are you sure?
Katie managed a small smile.
I'll be fine. Is everyone else okay?
Oh, I'm fine, said Joshua, joining them. His eyes flicked back and forth, as if scanning the restaurant for potential signs of danger. I'm just great. Nothing like finding out you're on death's list to make your day, huh?
But we reached the end of the list, Amy told him. Jack, we have, haven't we?
He pursed his lips. I'm not sure.
We must have, Amy insisted. 5 senses, 5 people, right? That means it's over.
Katie looked questioningly at him.
Jack, what's wrong?
I don't know, he said. I still think there's something else. Something I missed. The vague memory of a distorted face, of something gray and wet at the center of the pentagram. A body part? A brain? Flickered through his mind. I don't know, he repeated. Amy rested a reassuring hand on his shoulder.
Jack, it's okay, she said. You don't need to worry about it anymore. We beat it.
Her expression unexpectedly brightened.
Huh? We beat it.
Hell, I'm glad I'm not the only person who's pleased about that, Joshua remarked. So now what do we do?
I know that I want to go home, said Katie firmly. You should too, Jack. I'd still like you to appear on my show tomorrow, if you feel that you're up to it, of course.
Jack considered it. Yeah, he said at last. Yes, I will. He made a promise to her, and whatever else happened, he was determined to fulfill his promises. 10:30, you said?
Yes, I'll make sure that my people know you're coming and have everything set up for you. But I'd like to see you before we start taping anyway. Go through what we're going to talk about. I'll make sure he's awake in time,
Amy assured her. Joshua raised an eyebrow but didn't comment.
Jack, shall we go?
Where? He asked, still distracted by the disturbing memory of his vision.
Duh, home, silly.
I don't have it, he began before registering her expression. Oh, gotcha. Leaving Katie to answer Joshua's questions about when and where the edition of her show featuring Jack would be airing, Amy led Jack out of the restaurant. Bereaved was still lurking on the periphery of the uniformed officers, talking to the other patrons, and gave them both a nasty look as they headed for the exit. Amy ignored it. Jack stared back defiantly. Outside, they found a handful of other cops holding back a curious crowd. Among the people was a minicam news crew. Jack was taken aback when he saw that the cameraman was the same guy who had filmed Chelsea Cox's death. Brad somebody. He heard his name mentioned in a loud whisper, then the reporter, a man with plastic-looking hair and a slightly vacant expression, bustled past the cops and thrust a microphone at him. Mr. Curtis, Vaughn Henderson, WNYK News, can I talk to you for a moment? Taken by surprise, Jack stopped. I guess. Henderson glanced at Brad, giving him some kind of signal, then turned back to face Jack. Standing, Jack noticed so that his own face would appear in profile on camera. Jack Curtis, you've been present at the deaths of 3 celebrities in the past 3 days. Chelsea Cox, Dawson Donahue, and now Dominique Swan.
Can you tell us how you managed to be on the scene for all these tragic occurrences?" "Sorry, but he can't," Amy cut in quickly, placing herself between Jack and the camera. "Jack, come on, let's get out of here." She tried to maneuver him back behind the cops, but Henderson, undeterred, squeezed after them. "Mr. Curtis, is it true that you've had psychic premonitions about these deaths?" "How the hell did you—" Jack started, before clamping his mouth shut as he remembered that he was still being taped. Amy said something to one of the cops, who nodded and moved to block the camera's view. "There's a cab," she told him, pointing into the street and waving frantically at it. The battered yellow Caprice squelched to a standstill in a bank of dirty snow at the side of the street, Jack gratefully climbing into the back seat. Amy followed him, telling the driver her address. "How the hell did he find out about you know?" he asked, looking away as Brad tried to get one last shot of him driving off. Amy glared back at the restaurant, seeing Bereave emerge. "I can guess," she snapped. "Cops and their goddamn gossip." She doubted Bereave would have been the one talking to the press, but she knew that he'd discussed her current situation with other cops, and it only took one loudmouth in the precinct to drop a hint to some pal in the journalistic profession. For the price of a couple of drinks, of course, to let the word out that there was something of potential interest going on. "Well, that's me. Screwed." "What do you mean?" "If the news people know about you and your premonitions, then that means internal affairs are going to know about it as well. So I'm going to have to answer questions about it no matter what. And Pete was right. They're not going to accept that as an answer. The NYPD doesn't recognize the existence of the paranormal. Not last time I checked, anyway." She caught sight of the driver looking quizzically back over his shoulder at her. "Yeah, eyes on the road, pal." "So, what are you gonna do?" Jack asked. "I don't know. I'll have to figure that out when it happens, I guess." She let out a deep sigh and sank back into the taxi's sagging seat, huddling into her coat. Jack wanted to say something to boost her confidence, but nothing was forthcoming. The knowledge that the press knew about his visions had rattled him more than he would have expected. Did that mean he was going to be regarded as some kind of freak, a joke to be mocked and disregarded? There was something else still weighing heavily on his mind as well. Try as he might, he couldn't free himself from the last image of Dominique Swann, staring desperately at him as the life drained out of her, blood oozing from her mouth, as she silently begged for help that nobody could give her. He slumped back next to Amy. They drove through the cold streets of the city in silence. Amy didn't get any more talkative when they returned to her apartment, almost immediately heading out into the night again to get both of them something to eat. She returned almost 20 minutes later, bearing a pizza, which they worked their way through almost wordlessly, Amy flicking through the TV channels until she eventually found a news report on the death of Dominique. It was that same reporter, Henderson, who'd caught Jack at the restaurant delivering the story, starting with the potted history of Dominique's life and career before going into the more sensational aspects of her death. A woman whom Jack belatedly realized was one of Dominique's friends, since she was now taking full advantage of the situation to get her moment on camera, described events with a certain degree of drunken exaggeration, before both Joshua and Katie were caught up on camera, leaving the restaurant. Katie still looked shaken and told Henderson she had nothing to say before leaving, but Joshua, having donned a pair of expensive sunglasses, dropped back into the role of the master to offer a few words of condolence. He was cut off mid-sentence, Jack guessing because his next word was almost certainly motherfucker. Amy let out a little grunt of disapproval. Although he'd half expected it, the next shot still sent a cold charge through Jack. It was him on the screen, looking around in surprise at the camera as Henderson called his name. Amy quickly interposed herself, but the reporter provided a voiceover rather than using the recorded questions. "This man, Jack Curtis, has been present when 3 young celebrities have died in mysterious circumstances in the past 3 days. Garbage CEO Dawson Donahue, sensual chef Dominique Swann, and WNYK's own award-winning reporter Chelsea Cox." Pictures of each victim flashed up. He claims to have had a psychic vision of the deaths. Were Katie Aston and Master Thug also in his premonition? The police may want to peek into his crystal ball. Vaughn Henderson, WNYK News. Huh, said Jack, dismayed. He stood, turning his back on the TV and slowly wandering around the room until he came face to face with one of Amy's larger sculptures. The dead eyes of the tall bird stared back at him from above its long, pointed beak. Huh, well, that's going to complicate things. You're not kidding, Amy said in a small voice. Jack looked at her. She'd curled into a ball on the couch, arms wrapped tightly around her legs. Amy, what's the matter? She stayed silent and still for some moments before lifting the remote and switching off the TV. I think, she eventually said, I just saw the end of my police career. Jack moved back to the couch and sat next to her. What do you mean? She waved a disconsolate hand at the TV. I mean that now everybody in the damn city knows about you and your vision, and me. Pete was right. The department is going to want to know what the hell's going on, and whether I've been keeping this or anything from them. But you said yourself the NYPD doesn't believe in the paranormal, said Jack. They can't use something against you if they don't accept that it exists. They might not believe in the paranormal, but they don't believe in people who do believe in it either, Amy told him miserably. I'm screwed. Hesitantly, Jack lifted a hand and rested it on her shoulder. Amy, you're not screwed. Just blame everything on me. She tipped her head to look at him. What? I'll take the blame. You don't have to admit believing in anything at all. You're a cop, right? Maybe not for long, she cut in. Jack shook his head. No, that's not going to happen. You're a cop. You were investigating a lead and it panned out. That's all that matters, surely. If they want to know how you got the lead in the first place, just blame it on me. Like I said, I've got nothing to lose. I don't think that it's going to be that easy, said Amy. And you do have something to lose now, remember? Because all of this, you've turned your life around. You're not some penniless homeless guy anymore. I don't have a home, Jack pointed out. Now it was Amy's turn to wrap an arm around his shoulders. Yeah, she said, looking into his eyes. You do. It took a moment for the full meaning of her words to sink in. Really? He asked, almost unwilling to believe it. Yeah. Oh. She nodded. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to say. Thanks would be nice, Amy said with a half smile. It seems a bit inadequate, considering everything that you've done for me already, I mean. Jack, you saved my life. I owe you everything. He felt somewhat uncomfortable. You don't have to take me in because of that, Amy. You say it like I'm adopting a stray kitten or something. Jack, I'm not just making the offer because of what you did for me. There are other reasons as well. But you hardly know me. I know you well enough to know that I want to get to know you more. Amy smiled at him again, and this time Jack couldn't help but respond in kind. Just because you've been through some bad times doesn't stop you from being a good person. You've proved that with what you've done. And because of you, 2 other people who would have been dead are still alive as well. She watched as the smile on his face faded. Jack, what is it? He sighed. It's just 3 people are alive who wouldn't be if it wasn't for me, for us. But there were 3 other people who aren't. I should have been able to do more to save them. Jack, you did everything you possibly could to try to save them, Amy protested. You can't blame yourself for their death. It's hard not to when... Dominique's anguished face appeared in shocking clarity when he closed his eyes. Her last despairing look of pain directed right at him. If I'd just been a bit faster, then maybe I could have... Jack, Amy's voice was firm, authoritative. You did everything you possibly could to save them. Hell, you did way more than most people would have. You saved the lives of 3 people. She pulled him closer, fixing her eyes on his. That's what you should be thinking about. You beat that psycho. You beat death's list. She gestured at the window where light from the moon was casting a pale light over the snowy street outside. Artemis can look down with her eye all she wants, but she's not going to see anything. It's over, and I'm still alive. Katie and Joshua are still alive, and so are you. You've done it.
But what about the sixth victim? Jack said. There's still somebody else. I'm sure of it, and I don't even know who.
The sixth shall be revealed through the taking of the 5. Yeah, I remember, said Amy. But the 5 haven't been taken, and you said that you couldn't see who the 6th victim was when you had your vision. So maybe that means that there isn't going to be a 6th victim anymore. You saved him as well, or her, without even having to find them.
I don't know.
Amy reached up and gently placed a finger over his mouth. Jack stopped talking, surprised. I do, she said. We're all safe, thanks to you, Jack. She moved her finger away, then leaned over to kiss him. He returned the kiss, the two of them pressing closer together as their mouths joined, each feeling the warmth of the other's lips and tongue. Amy was the first to pull away. Jack looked at her in momentary disappointment before registering her suggestive expression. Are you coming? She asked. He knew exactly what she meant, but decided to tease her for a moment.
Coming where?
She smiled. You don't have to sleep on my couch tonight, Jack. He awoke with a start, confused for a few moments, confused by the comfort of a proper bed, the warmth of a naked body next to his. Amy's hand slipped over his stomach around his side. Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering when you'd wake up. Jack shifted position so that he could look at her in the low morning light of her bedroom. She was lying on her side, smiling down at him, head supported by her other hand.
What time is it?
Just after 8?
Later than I normally get up. This is one hell of a comfortable bed.
Amy suppressed a snort of laughter, still grinning. You think you could get used to it then? He reached out to slip an arm beneath her body. The simple sensation of feeling the heat of another's bare skin against his own was something he hadn't experienced for years, and had honestly thought he never would again. It gave him a thrill of sheer delight to realize that he'd been wrong.
It's got everything in it that I could want,
he said as he pushed himself up on one elbow to kiss her. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a tiny voice protested that he was being unfaithful to Jennifer. Jennifer had kicked him out. The fuck with her. He had Amy now. When he'd been with Jennifer, his life had been going downhill all the way. Now, he was on the way back up. As if to confirm that, Amy reminded him, You need to get up and get ready to go and meet Katie.
I've still got a couple of hours yet,
Jack half complained, nuzzling up against Amy's cheek. Nuh-uh. You need to get some more new clothes.
What? What's wrong with the ones I've got now?
She smiled and kissed him. Trust me, you're going on TV. You need to look your best. You want to make a good impression on Katie, don't you?
What? You think she's got a thing for me?
She hooked an arm around his neck and pulled him closer. I saw you first. Another kiss. But seriously, I'll come with you. Tell you what looks best on you.
You think I can't tell on my own?
You should always do what the cop tells you, Amy said jokingly, kneeling up and straddling Jack.
Especially when they're hot police women?
You're a fast learner. She lowered her head to kiss him again. So just lie there and... Oh, man. The phone by the bed started to ring.
Just ignore it,
Jack offered hopefully, but he could already tell that Amy's mood had changed. It might be important. She clambered off him, moving to the side of the mattress. Hold that thought, she said, glancing between his legs, then picked up the phone. Hello? Even in the half-light of the bedroom, Jack could see Amy visibly slump, her voice becoming more terse and strained with each answer. Finally, she replaced the handset and turned back to him, face grim. That was the precinct. They want me to come in for an interview. Internal Affairs want us... Internal Affairs wants to talk to me." She looked away from him, down at the bed, then suddenly beat the mattress with her fists. "Shit! Shit! Shit!" "Amy," said Jack, unsure what he could do to reassure her. She stopped, taking a long breath and looking back at him, embarrassed. "Sorry. I'm so sorry. Damn it. I knew this would happen. I just didn't think it was going to be so soon. Jack, I'm going to have to go. They want to see me before 9.
"That soon?"
IA, work according to the time in hell, not Manhattan." Head bowed, Amy climbed from the bed and padded over to a closet, taking out clothes. "Guess I'm not going to be able to go with you today. I'm sorry."
"I'll try not to buy anything too hideous," he assured her, trying to lighten the moment.
She glanced back at him, the faintest hint of a smile briefly curling the corner of her mouth.
"Will you be okay?"
"I'll survive, I guess," she said, pulling on her underwear. "Though by the time IA's finished with me, I might end up checking parking meters for a living if I'm lucky." She looked at Jack again, catching his glum expression. "Look, Jack, don't worry about me. I'll get through this, whatever they throw at me. You just go and be a TV star. I'll try to catch up with you at Katie's studio, if I can get back there in time. Otherwise, we'll meet back here. There's a spare set of keys in the pot by the sink."
"Are you sure? If you want me to go with you, I can give them my side of the story. I can call Katie and get her to reschedule."
Amy shook her head. "No, I've got to handle this myself. I'm a cop. I've got to take the consequences of my own actions." She finished donning her clothes, shaking out her hair as she pulled on a black sweater. "I've got to go. I'll see you later, okay?"
"Okay,"
said Jack, watching as she hurried from the bedroom.
"Good luck."
But the door had already closed behind her.
"What the hell happened to you?"
Bereave asked, intercepting Amy as she entered the precinct. "What do you mean?" She was in a bad enough mood as it was, without Bereave adding to it.
"Your hair. Looks like you got dragged through a hedge."
"I didn't have time to shower. IA only called me less than half an hour ago, and it took me that long just to get here."
Bereave flicked a glance at his watch. "You been sleeping in while you've been on leave? Huh? You're normally up by—"
A tight, bitter look of suspicion appeared on his face.
"Wait, you didn't—"
"I've got to go, Pete," Amy said, cutting off a question that she could already predict. "I'll maybe catch you later when I get out. If I get out." She started to walk away.
"Wait!"
Bereave shouted in the same voice he would use on a suspect. A couple of the other uniformed cops in the precinct's entrance looked around to see what was going on. Amy stopped, refusing to look back at him.
"Amy, you're not telling me that with him?"
She slowly turned to face him, jaw clenched tight, as anger and adrenaline boiled in her stomach. "Pete, I'm going to tell you this for the last time. It's none of your fucking business, okay? I don't want to hear one more word from you about Jack. Do I make myself fucking clear?" Bereave was practically shaking with rage, struggling to keep his voice under control.
"Yeah, Amy, I get it."
"Good." She whipped around and strode away from him, heading for the stairs.
"He's gonna get you hurt, Amy!"
Bereave shouted after her.
"I'm not gonna let that happen."
She didn't look back. Okay, listeners, this has been Chapter 11 of Final Destination, Death of the Senses. And I can really tell we're in the home stretch now. Just from watching all the Final Destination movies, if the book is going by the rules of the movies. Alright, so half of them have died. He saved the other half, and they think it's over. They always do in the movies. They always think it's over. But there's still like 65, 70 pages left in the book, and I have a feeling they're about to get a rude awakening. But I gotta say that Dominique's death did not go the way I was expecting. I thought she was going to be saved once he grabbed her up, and I was like, shit. Well, that was anticlimactic. And then she swallowed the bottle, like literally. So yeah, that caught me off guard, but I really enjoyed that scene. I really thought it played out cinematically like in the movies, and I think the writer did a really good job of making that scene play out the way it did. So great, very visual. The words he used, the way he split up the little parts of the scene were great. And I'd like to know you guys' thought on this chapter tonight and what you guys think of the book so far as a whole. And I do apologize that it's been a few days since I've been able to get back to this book. But if it's not been one thing, it's been another. But I'm back now. I'm going to get this book knocked out because I enjoy it so much, I don't want to stop reading it. That's why tonight's chapter, I went ahead and went on longer than I normally do. And yeah, so I'm going to be back very soon with more of this great book. And we're going to find out what's going to happen with Jack and Amy, and I guess Katie and Joshua, because as far as the movies are concerned, none of these guys are safe. They might think they are, but we all know they're not. And is anybody else noticing a pattern of right before these people die, they say something like, "I'm okay," or "I'm fine." It's like every time somebody in this book says, "I'm okay," or "I'm fine," they're fucked. So going forward, if we hear somebody say that, we can almost expect they're going to be checking out soon. All right, guys, I'll be back very, very soon. And we're going to find out what happens next. Until then, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening, and I'm fine. I'm okay. Okay, for now, I'm okay and I'm fine. Have a great night, everybody.
My dreams, as before.